I didn't agree to make it for a long time. They went on and on writing. Then I met Martin Sixsmith, and then eventually I met the real Philomena. When we were filming The Laundry, she was on set. I said, "You shouldn't be here. This is everything you've spent your life getting away from." But it was mainly all on location, in such glamorous places as Rickmansworth. It is an astonishing story. But what is good is it's not a miserable film. It's a very cheerful film because the two of them are such extraordinary characters. On the one hand, there's this terrible tragedy, and on the other hand, there are these jokes. So you're really doing tragedy and comedy at the same time. I always found that interesting. I could see right from the beginning that there was a sort of romantic comedy in there, or a film, a sort of odd couple film, whatever. And then underneath it all was this ghastly business that had happened 50 years ago. It's about a woman who's been treated appallingly. That she, from the middle of Ireland, and when they had these terrible Magdalene laundries, and she was turned out by her family and put into a convent where she had the baby. And then at 4, the baby was sold to the Americans. If the child got to 4, they were allowed to keep them. At 3.5, what happened is the Americans came to buy a little girl, and the little girl and the boy were inseparable. So the boy just sort of wandered after the little girl, and they said, "All right, we'll have them both. We'll take them both." I mean, it's a dreadful story, and of course, both the church in Ireland and the state were involved, because to go to America, the child needed a passport, so the government knew perfectly well what was going on. Then on top of that is this film of this odd pair of people wandering around America trying to find, where the child is. So, in a way, the story of the Magdalene laundries is known. What was original about this was, I don't know how Steve did it. He bought the book without having read it, and then he moved the story from the story that's in the book to the story that's in the film. So it became a story about, amongst other things, his own lapsed Catholicism. And I don't know how he did that. That seems to me that's sort of genius. You could have made a film of the book, but it would have been Martin Sixsmith was much more interested in what happened to the child when he went to America. But Steve moved it in some way. I don't even know if he was conscious of what he was doing. But it's very, very different. So when I read the book, which I eventually did, I was quite sort of shocked. Or I could see that was where the whole thing had come from. In the end, it's interesting. It's the relationship between the two of them that makes you cry as much as Judy, Philomena coming to terms with her the past. It's a film of optimism because the two of them are so cheerful, and no, cheerful is the wrong word. The two of them are so wonderful, and they're so touching, and they're so fond of each other. So it's not, given that it's based on a tragedy, it's a remarkably cheerful film. You just think this great actress, she's like a sort of diamond that all we're doing is polishing it. She's so valuable, and it's extraordinary. It must have been like that making films with Clark Gable or something. You had this very, very valuable asset, and you're really refining the edges. And she's such a wonderful woman and so talented. Well, I knew that, listen, it's pretty straightforward. When Judy is being good, she's always good, so that's not particularly unusual. I've done 4 films now with Judy, and it's always very, very... she's just the most extraordinary woman. quite extraordinary woman. She's so full of joy and life and strength. She's wonderful. Well, I don't know if he's like Martin Sixsmith, but he's very, very good in the film and a lovely fellow. And I was more... when I met Martin Sixsmith, I said, you're a good sport, letting Steve play you. And he then, some weeks later, came and said, this remark of yours has rather unnerved me. But Steve is great. No, Steve, I don't... I just really know the work I've done with him on this film, and it's been very, very interesting. He's very, very bright, and he's very original, and he has a really, he has a moral sense, so I take my hat off to him. When I put the film together, I realised how good Steve was. That came later. What I mean is you do it in bits, and everything is as you would want it to be, or you don't accept things until you think they're good enough. But then when you put it all together, I think he's absolutely wonderful.